I never thought my life would come down to a single piece of paper tucked between worn pages of a recipe book. The day Mom's will was read, I sat at the end of a polished table, drowning in shame as my sister Charlotte grinned, the keys to Mom's $33 million estate practically sparkling in her hands. She got it all: the mansion, the beach house, the Teslas, even Mom's collection of Rolexes. Me? I got a battered old cookbook, pages stained with gravy and memories. Laughter rippled through the room. Nobody saw what mattered, not even me, until I turned to a dog-eared recipe for pecan pie and found a page that changed everything. What I discovered inside didn't just unravel my sister's perfect world. It exposed the lies my family was built on. But what I didn't know was, the truth had only begun to rise. I sat clutching a recipe book. Charlotte held the estate keys, and her victory echoed off marble floors. It's strange how you can feel invisible in a room full of people who share your blood. The day Mom's will was read, I found myself at the very edge of the long mahogany table, the old family cookbook heavy in my lap. My sister, Charlotte, was front and center, her smile so wide you'd think she just hit the lottery. Maybe she had. The lawyer, Mr. Evans, cleared his throat and began reading. His voice seemed distant, like I was underwater. To my beloved daughter, Charlotte Harris, I leave my entire estate. This includes the house at Harbor View, the beach property, all vehicles and jewelry, and the contents of all bank accounts. Every line hit harder than the last. $33 million gone with a few sentences. I looked down at the recipe book in my hands, worn, stained, the spine held together with tape and memory. Laughter rippled across the room, low and mean. Charlotte's fiancé, Bradley, couldn't hide his smirk as he squeezed her hand. Aunt Marjorie whispered something behind her hand, and my cousin snorted into her champagne. The only thing left for me was a battered cookbook. Not even a car, not even a watch. Just a collection of family recipes, the ones Mom used to make on Sunday afternoons. Dad didn't meet my eyes. The lawyer barely glanced at me, shuffling the pages as if to move things along. I could feel the shame crawling up my neck, heat burning my cheeks. I tried to disappear into the high-backed chair, wishing I could melt away. Charlotte's heels clicked against the marble as she strode up to the front. "Thank you, everyone, for coming. Mom always said family was the most important thing." Her voice dripped with fake warmth. She flashed the estate keys and gave me a smile that was all teeth. Some of us were just meant for more. No one spoke up for me. Not a single person offered a kind word, not even a pitying glance. I heard the snickering, saw the looks. I gripped the recipe book tighter, knuckles white. I remembered Mom's voice in the kitchen, the smell of bread baking, the way she laughed when I spilled flour everywhere. Now that was all I had left. The lawyer closed the folder with a final snap. That concludes the reading of the will. Chairs scraped back. Conversations resumed. Charlotte started planning her celebration before the echoes died, already talking about redecorating, about trips, about selling the beach house for something better. Bradley joked about parking the new Tesla in the circular drive. No one cared that I sat there, alone, with only an old cookbook and a hollow feeling where my family should have been. I got up, keeping my head down, doing my best not to let them see the tears burning my eyes. Maybe they would never see me at all. But as I left the room, something odd caught my attention. The recipe book felt heavier than I remembered, and tucked between the pages, not quite flush with the edge, was a slip of paper I'd never seen before, one that didn't belong. But none of them noticed the one page in that book that didn't belong yet. Charlotte filmed herself in the mansion's gold-tiled foyer while Dad whispered, "She earned it." You'd think after the will things might quiet down, but for Charlotte it was only the beginning. That same night she started her victory parade. I watched her from the shadowy hallway as she glided across the marble floors, camera in hand, recording a video for her followers. "New beginnings in the Harris mansion," she chirped, spinning so the golden tiles and the crystal chandelier glimmered behind her. It already looked like she belonged. It was as if she'd been rehearsing for this her whole life. Dad stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder, beaming. "She earned it," he said under his breath, but I heard him clearly, like I always did. His words rolled over me, heavy as stone. When he turned to me, there was nothing but a tight smile, the kind that says, "Try not to embarrass us." Charlotte's friends crowded in. their laughter echoing down the halls. They all wore the same look, envy, and admiration, never directed at me. The celebration didn't stop inside. By morning, Charlotte's face was all over my social feeds. Blessed, dreams come true, a new queen in town. Even our neighbors posted comments. Charlotte always had such poise. She's going to do amazing things with the estate. Like they'd forgotten I existed. My phone stayed silent except for one message from an old school friend. "Didn't your mom leave you anything?" I didn't reply. Dad moved through the house like a man in a museum, pointing out Charlotte's new responsibilities, as if he were passing down royal duties. When I tried to talk to him, maybe just to feel like a son for once, he brushed me off. "Maybe if you'd worked harder, Michael." That's all he said, like I hadn't spent every summer fixing that broken fence, painting those shutters, mowing the lawn while Charlotte sunbathed. Charlotte caught me by the kitchen doorway, her phone pointed at me, smile just a little too sharp. "You okay, Mikey?" she said, loud enough for her audience to hear. "Maybe this is a chance for you to finally find your thing, you know?" She squeezed my arm in mock encouragement, as if I were a child who had lost his toy. "If you need advice, I know some career coaches who specialize in late bloomers." The words stung more than any slap. Laughter followed me as I retreated, the kind of laughter that says you'll always be on the outside looking in. I could feel myself shrinking, dissolving into wallpaper. It was like I'd become invisible overnight. Even the house, the place I'd called home for decades, seemed to erase my presence. Every room Charlotte entered became hers. Every old family photograph now featured her at the center, me half-cropped at the edge. Even Dad, who used to call me Champ, barely acknowledged me at dinner, choosing instead to toast to Charlotte's future with the good wine. But resentment was growing inside me, quietly, steadily. I felt it burning behind my eyes each time I scrolled past Charlotte's latest update, each time Dad praised her new business plan, each time I overheard neighbors talking about how the right Harris child finally got what she deserved. No one could see the storm gathering under the surface. No one realized that the same mansion, the one Charlotte showed off like a prize, would become the center of a scandal that would make all of them rethink who the real Harris heir should have been. No one knew the same mansion would become a crime scene within weeks. Grandma Lucy's voice echoed, "Gold's always buried in dust, Michael." Some days I can still smell the cinnamon and flour that clung to Grandma Lucy's kitchen. While Charlotte and the others lived for applause, Grandma always kept her eyes on the quiet corners, especially where I stood. It was Grandma who'd pull me aside at family gatherings, offering a wink when I dropped a plate or fumbled a joke. "Gold's always buried in dust, Michael." She'd say it as she passed me a rag to wipe up another spill, or as she pressed a tarnished penny into my palm for good luck. Most thought she was just talking nonsense, her mind drifting with age. But even now, I hear those words louder than ever. The day after Charlotte's party, when the house was filled with laughter that wasn't mine, I escaped to the porch, recipe book in hand, the one nobody wanted. I traced my fingers over its cracked spine, recalling how Grandma once insisted that the real treasures never shine on the surface. People miss what matters because they're too busy counting what sparkles. I was 10 when she told me about the Harris family's old habit, hiding their best recipes on stained napkins, scribbled scraps, or the back of faded photographs. "One day," she said, voice low so Mom and Dad couldn't hear, "you'll find something meant just for you. Don't ignore the things that look like junk." Back then, I'd just nodded, eager for pie and stories, not realizing she was giving me a key I'd one day need. Years later, sitting on the porch with Charlotte's victory echoing inside, her words circled me like a lifeline. For a moment, I wondered if the battered cookbook was a cruel joke or a breadcrumb trail. Doubt gnawed at me. Maybe there really was nothing there, just gravy stains and old ink. But a flicker of hope, a memory of Grandma's fierce hugs and sharper wisdom, pushed me to believe otherwise. I flipped through the pages, looking for something, anything that might have slipped past sharper eyes. Smudges, handwritten notes, a pressed four-leaf clover. My fingers hesitated over a recipe for pecan pie, her specialty, one that looked messier than the rest. I remembered Grandma's laugh when Charlotte wrinkled her nose at old people's food. That was the day she gave me my first lesson in looking deeper. Bittersweet hope swelled in my chest. If anyone ever believed I mattered, it was her. In that moment, it almost felt like she was sitting beside me, urging me to trust myself for once, to listen for the truth that everyone else had missed. I closed my eyes, letting her voice anchor me. Gold's always buried in dust. Maybe she knew what the rest of the family never would, that the things left behind, the so-called junk, could change everything if you looked hard enough. Grandma's old riddle about secrets in plain sight would finally prove true. Champagne flowed at Charlotte's inheritance party. I wore a server's apron, not a suit. The sound of clinking glasses and Charlotte's laughter spilled through every room of the mansion. Chandeliers glittered over a crowd that seemed to swell with every congratulatory hug. My sister stood at the center of it all, radiant in a dress that cost more than my car. Every time someone toasted her, I felt myself shrinking, a shadow in the corner. Charlotte called it the next chapter party, but it was more like a coronation, her crowning moment as the new ruler of Mom's empire. Local reporters hovered, their flashes lighting up Charlotte's practiced smile. The mayor stopped by for a quick photo, shaking her hand as if she'd saved the city, not just inherited its fanciest address. I was there all right, but not as family. Charlotte insisted I help out, so I wore an apron passing hors d'oeuvres to people who'd once been at my birthday parties. Every so often I'd catch a familiar face, a childhood friend or old neighbor. They'd glance away, pretending not to see me. The distance between us had never felt wider. From across the room, Charlotte raised her glass, voice echoing over the crowd. To new beginnings, and to letting go of the past, especially the things that weigh us down. People laughed, clapping as she bragged about selling off Mom's antique collection and auctioning family heirlooms. Each word felt like another cut, deeper than the last. A group of Dad's business associates chuckled as Charlotte described how even the old recipe books are headed for the trash. My cheeks burned. I gripped my serving tray tighter, reminding myself not to react, not here, not now. The night dragged on, each toast a reminder that this wasn't my world anymore. Charlotte's fiancé, arms around her waist, winked at me as if to say, "You lost." Even my childhood friends, the ones I used to race bikes with on summer evenings, barely acknowledged me. I saw the sympathy in their eyes, the kind reserved for someone who's lost a fight he never had a chance to win. Public humiliation turned to grief, then anger. Mom's memory was being turned into spectacle, and I was powerless to stop it. As the party wound down, Charlotte stood atop the grand staircase, her new diamond earrings catching every last bit of light. She offered a final toast. To family, may we always know our place. The guests roared with laughter, glasses raised high. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the tray. And then, just as the last echo of laughter faded, a commotion started at the entrance. One of the security guards hurried over, a look of uncertainty on his face. "Michael Harris?" he called, scanning the crowd. "There's someone at the gate asking for you by name." Heads turned. Charlotte's eyes narrowed, but I felt something shift inside me. Maybe, just maybe, the party was about to end on someone else's terms. As the last toast rang out, a stranger at the gate was asking for me by name. A business card slipped into my pocket. Ask about what's missing. The party had all but ended. Cars rolled down the drive, taillights glowing in the darkness, and Charlotte's laughter echoed from the upstairs balcony. I just wanted to disappear, to become invisible again, but the guard's words replayed in my mind. Someone was here, asking for me. I slipped out the side door and made my way down the path to the front gate, nerves jangling with each step. There, beneath the stone pillars and the new security cameras Charlotte had just installed, stood a man in a worn, gray suit. He didn't look like a lawyer or a reporter. His eyes were sharp but kind, and he seemed out of place among the gleaming cars and manicured lawns. He held out a business card, pressing it into my palm with a quiet urgency. "You don't know me," he said, voice low, "but you need to ask about what's missing. Sometimes the things left out of a will are more important than what's left in." I stared at him, heart pounding. "Who are you?" He smiled barely. "Let's just say I used to help your mother. And I believe she wanted you to have more than crumbs, Michael. Much more. Confusion, suspicion, and somehow a faint flicker of hope warred inside me. "What are you talking about?" He shook his head, gaze darting toward the house. "Not here, just look at the card. If you decide you want answers, call me. But hurry, the truth doesn't stay buried forever." Before I could ask another question, he turned and walked briskly away, vanishing into the night. The card felt heavy in my hand. I looked down, plain white, no logo, just a name, Thomas Mendez, and a number. But something caught my eye on the back, a line of handwriting, small and slanted. I nearly tossed his card, annoyed at the games, but paused. The handwriting. I recognized it. A gentle loop in the M, a little heart instead of a dot over the I. My chest tightened. It was my mother's handwriting. All at once, confusion melted into sharp curiosity. Was this a trap, or the first real sign that I hadn't been left empty-handed after all? My mind raced with questions, with memories of Mom's quiet smiles and half-finished sentences. Had she planned for this? Had she known what Charlotte would do? For the first time since the will was read, a spark of hope flickered in my chest. I clutched the card so tight my knuckles turned white, reading and rereading the message. Ask about what's missing. Suddenly, the cookbook at home felt less like an insult and more like a puzzle. And for the first time since Charlotte's coronation, I didn't feel quite so alone. I nearly tossed his card until I noticed the handwriting on the back matched Mom's. One gravy-stained page fluttered free. Mom's handwriting. Beach House. Code 1105. I was halfway through another sleepless night, the battered cookbook splayed out on my tiny kitchen table, when it happened. I turned the page to the old pecan pie recipe, the one Mom had made every Thanksgiving, when something odd caught my eye. Wedged between the stained, brittle pages was a single sheet of paper, folded tight and nearly falling apart. My heart thudded in my chest as I unfolded it. The paper was blotched with gravy, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Mom's soft, rounded script. Beach House. Code 1105. If you're reading this, Michael, trust your instincts. Some things are too important to leave behind. My hands trembled. Was this real? Was Mom talking to me across time, across loss, across betrayal? For the first time, the cookbook felt like more than just a consolation prize. It was a message, a clue, and suddenly everything about the will and the party seemed smaller, meaner, beside the point. I stared at the words for what felt like forever. The beach house, of course. The place Charlotte had already started redecorating. The one with the best ocean view in the county. A place I hadn't set foot in for years. What could they be waiting for me there? And what did 1105 open? A warning scribbled at the bottom stopped me cold. Don't trust what you see. Look deeper. Shock collided with a weird surge of excitement. For the first time since the humiliation of the will reading, I felt alive. I stuffed the cookbook and the secret page into my backpack and grabbed my keys. Charlotte's voice echoed in my head. You'll always have crumbs, Michael. Not tonight, I thought. The drive to the beach house was a blur of headlights and adrenaline. Every memory swirled. Childhood summers, bonfires, the scent of Mom's perfume on the sea breeze. I parked a block away, heart racing as I walked up the stone steps. Charlotte's new security camera blinked over the door, but I ignored it, stepping into the shadows by the garage. I fumbled with the code, 1105, running my finger over the rusty lock. It clicked open. My breath caught. The world narrowed to this single moment, the door creaking wide into the darkness. For a second, I hesitated. Was I ready for whatever Mom had left me? Or was this just another dead end, a ghost chasing a ghost? No, I had to see it through. I owed that much to myself. I drove to the beach house, code in hand, never expecting what I'd find inside. The safe behind Mom's favorite painting clicked open. Code 1105. The beach house was dark except for the thin line of moonlight slanting across the old living room. My hands shook as I crept toward the far wall, the air thick with salt and memories. Mom's favorite painting, her and Grandma Lucy in the garden, still hung where it always had, untouched by Charlotte's renovations. I stared at it for a moment, then gently lifted the frame. Behind it, a metal wall safe, just as the recipe page had promised. The code, 1105, burned in my mind. I entered it, my heart hammering. There was a long, tense pause, then a faint click. The door swung open. Inside was a small, battered envelope, thick with legal documents. I pulled it out, my fingers numb, and found a stack of faded photographs bound with a ribbon, images of Mom, Charlotte, and a third person I didn't recognize. Beneath the photos, nestled in the dust, was a USB drive. Someone had written in Sharpie, "For Michael. Play when alone." I stared at it, my mind racing. Legal papers, pictures, what could be so important? Mom hid them from everyone, even after death. My stomach twisted with fear and adrenaline. The documents were detailed. There were signed affidavits, letters between lawyers, and, most damningly, copies of Mom's old will, the one that split everything evenly between Charlotte and me. Attached, a note in Mom's handwriting, shaky but clear. "If you're reading this, something's gone wrong. Trust your heart, Michael." My legs nearly gave out. I stumbled to the couch, clutching the bundle, the reality of what I'd found sinking in. All those years, all those jokes about me being the crumb collector, and yet here I was, holding evidence that could unravel everything. I glanced at the USB, the weight of it pressing on my soul. What would I see? What would it change? For a second I hesitated, terror gripping my chest. Did I really want to know? But I had come too far to stop. Terror, disbelief, adrenaline. The USB drive's label, "For Michael. Play when alone." Charlotte's voice on video. "Just sign it, Mom. You're too tired to think straight?" I sat alone on the faded couch, the USB trembling in my hands. The house was silent except for the slow crash of waves outside, a world away from the storm brewing inside me. I slid the drive into my laptop, heart pounding, unsure if I was ready for the truth. The first file was a video. It opened with shaky footage, Mom in her bed, looking exhausted, eyes glassy with medication. Charlotte hovered over her, pen in hand, voice syrupy sweet but sharp as a knife. "Just sign it, Mom. You're too tired to think straight." "Let me help." Mom hesitated, her hand trembling. Charlotte pressed the paper closer, her tone darkening. "It's just a formality. You trust me, right?" The camera angle shifted. A lawyer I'd never seen before stepped into view, his face cold and impatient. "We need this tonight, Mrs. Harris. Your daughter's instructions are clear." I watched in horror as Mom, clearly unwell, signed her name again and again. The signatures didn't even match. In another clip, Charlotte laughed with the lawyer outside the hospital. "She'll never know the difference. The estate's as good as mine." My stomach lurched. There were more files. Bank transfers to offshore accounts, emails planning to auction off family heirlooms, even a recorded call between Charlotte and her fiancé, gloating about shutting Michael out for good. Every second shattered another piece of my faith in family was shattered. It wasn't just manipulation. It was theft, fraud, betrayal on a scale I'd never imagined. I felt my face burning with heartbreak, then cold with rage. All these years, and I'd been left with crumbs while Charlotte built her kingdom on lies. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice. I was done waiting. I barely slept. By dawn, anger pulsed through my veins, every memory of Charlotte's lies and Dad's silence boiling over. I gripped the folder tight, evidence burning a hole in my hand. The house was quiet, all that money and marble suddenly feeling as empty as I did. Dad's study was always off limits. Today, I didn't care. I pushed the heavy door open and strode inside, startling him so hard he nearly dropped his mug. Charlotte perched on the edge of his desk, scrolling her phone, looking up with that familiar mix of boredom and disdain. "We need to talk." "Now," I said, voice raw. Dad frowned. "Michael, can this wait?" I slammed the folder on the desk. "No, it can't." They both stared as I spread out the documents, the photos, the bank statements, the signed pages, and the USB. My hands shook, but my voice didn't. "Play this," I demanded, shoving the USB toward Dad's laptop. Charlotte rolled her eyes. "What is this, Michael?" Another pathetic attempt to ruin my morning. "Just play it," I snapped. Dad clicked play. For a few seconds, all you could hear was the whir of the laptop fan. Then Mom's tired voice crackled through the speakers. The footage showed Charlotte in Mom's bedroom, coaxing her to sign documents, her tone sickly sweet, her eyes cold. "You're too tired to think straight, Mom. Just sign here. I'll handle everything." Dad's face went pale. Charlotte didn't even try to hide her annoyance at first. "This doesn't prove anything," she scoffed. But it did. The next clip showed her laughing on the phone with a lawyer. If she can't even remember her own name, she can't object. "I'll have the assets in my name before the week's out." The room was silent, except for my heart thundering in my ears. Dad looked at me, panic and shame battling in his eyes. "Charlotte, tell me this isn't real." Charlotte tried to regain control. "This is out of context, Dad. Michael's twisting things. He's always been jealous," I snapped. "Jealous? Of stealing from Mom? Of watching you two pretend I don't exist? I was here, cleaning up her messes, driving her to chemo, while you were selling her things out from under her." Voices drifted in from the hall, servants, a neighbor, maybe even a reporter. Word was spreading. Dad stammered. I didn't know." Charlotte interrupted, her voice venomous. "If you go public with this, you'll destroy us all. You'll ruin this family, Michael." I squared my shoulders, feeling rage and vindication battling inside me. "No, Charlotte. You did that the moment you put yourself above everyone else." The room seemed to tilt. My childhood home, the walls covered with family photos, suddenly felt like the set of a play I was no longer just an extra in. Charlotte's mask finally slipped. She glared at me with hatred and something else, fear. "You'll regret this, Michael. I promise you." My hands were still shaking, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. The truth, ugly as it was finally out in the open. This was just the opening shot in a war I never wanted to fight. The courtroom buzzed, lawyers arguing, reporters scribbling, Charlotte feigning innocence. If I thought the inheritance meeting was the most humiliating day of my life, I was wrong. This was worse. The county courthouse was packed, family in the front row, neighbors, reporters clutching notepads. My heart hammered as I sat beside my lawyer, the folder of evidence trembling in my hands. Charlotte made her entrance in a designer dress, sunglasses perched on her head, looking for all the world like a celebrity at a movie premiere. She winked at the cameras. My stomach churned. The judge's voice sliced through the murmurs. "We are here to contest the will of Marilyn Harris. Mr. Michael Harris, you may proceed." I stood, palms sweating, voice quivering but clear. "Your Honor, I present evidence that my mother's will was altered under duress, and that my sister, Charlotte, orchestrated fraud." A gasp rippled through the gallery. My lawyer loaded the USB footage on a screen for all to see. Charlotte's face flickered with a practiced smile, then stiffened as the audio played, her voice manipulating Mom, her laugh as she boasted about transferring funds, the signatures forged in shaky pen. Charlotte's attorney objected, but the judge waved him off. "Let it play." The silence in the room was electric. Dad stared at the floor. Reporters' pens flew. Family friends exchanged wide-eyed looks. Charlotte didn't miss a beat. When the video ended, she dabbed at her eyes and looked at the judge. "Your Honor, my brother is twisting the truth. Those clips are out of context. My mother wanted me to have the estate," she told me herself, privately. The judge arched an eyebrow. "And the evidence of funds transferred to your offshore account? The forged signatures?" Charlotte's lawyer scrambled for explanations, stress, confusion, and grief. The excuses sounded thinner with every sentence. My lawyer spoke up. "We have notarized drafts, witness statements, and handwriting analysis. The will was changed while Mrs. Harris was heavily medicated. This is not just about inheritance. It's fraud." My heart hammered. I watched the judge's face, searching for any sign of hope. Every second felt like a year. Then the gossip started in whispers behind me, neighbors leaning together, reporters texting, phones buzzing as word spread. Charlotte's friends huddled in the hall, glancing nervously between her and the judge. The judge leaned forward. "Until this matter is fully investigated, I am freezing all estate assets. No money will be dispersed. The Harris estate, including the mansion, vehicles, and accounts, is hereby under court control." Her gavel cracked like thunder. Next hearing in 3 weeks. Court adjourned. I exhaled for the first time all day. Charlotte's face was stone. She barely looked at me as the bailiff escorted her away for questioning. Dad stumbled out, pale and silent. I stood in the middle of the courtroom, still shaking as the reporters swarmed me. Flashbulbs popped. Someone shouted, "How does it feel to bring down your own sister?" The true cost of justice was just beginning to reveal itself. Charlotte's face on TV. Heiress under investigation. I'll never forget the first time I saw Charlotte's picture on the evening news. Not for a gala, but a police investigation. The headline scrolled beneath her flawless smile. Local heiress under fraud investigation. I stood frozen in my kitchen, half a cup of stale coffee in my hand, as reporters replayed the same footage of her inheritance party, this time overlaid with words like embezzlement, forgery, and court order. Calls and texts poured in. Friends who once envied my family now asked what really happened. The town, always quick to gossip, turned on a dime. Suddenly, people remembered Charlotte's arrogance, her condescension at charity auctions, the way she dismissed anyone she couldn't use. Now, nobody wanted to be associated with her. Her fiancé, who once gloated at the will reading, released a statement to the press. I was misled. I have ended our engagement. The social media photos vanished overnight. Even her closest friends stopped answering her calls. Dad, who spent his whole life chasing status, found himself a pariah. His business partners backed away. At the country club, old friends whispered as he walked past, their greetings colder than the ice in his bourbon. For a man who lived for reputation, it was a sentence worse than jail. Meanwhile, the police investigation was relentless. They raided the mansion, boxed up documents, and even searched Charlotte's private safe deposit boxes. It was all over the news. A family drama worth millions crumbling in public. I watched it all from the sidelines, no longer the shadow at the edge of the room. The lawyer called, "We're winning." Charlotte's assets are frozen. The estate is untouchable until this is over. The words washed over me, strange and unreal. I had spent so long feeling powerless, humiliated, less than. Now the world saw the truth. And yet, vindication came with an ache I didn't expect. Charlotte was still my sister. Dad, for all his blindness, was still my father. Part of me mourned the family we could have been, if only greed and pride hadn't hollowed us out. But I couldn't deny it. For the first time in my life, people looked at me with respect. The lawyer who once pitied me now shook my hand. Neighbors who ignored me waved from their porches. Even distant relatives called to say they always knew something was off. Charlotte's empire of lies collapsed in slow motion, and standing in the ashes, I felt something I'd never had before. Dignity. I made Grandma's pecan pie, the first time anyone came to visit me in years. After everything, the trials, the headlines, the long, empty nights, I found myself standing in my own small kitchen, clutching Grandma Lucy's old cookbook. My hands shook a little as I turned the faded stained pages to her pecan pie recipe. The instructions were written in her spidery cursive, with little notes in the margins. Don't skimp on the vanilla. Let the pie cool before slicing. Patience is everything. I could almost hear her voice, steady and warm. Baking that pie felt like building a bridge back to something I'd lost. As the sweet, nutty smell drifted through my apartment, I texted a few old friends and cousins, unsure if anyone would even reply. For so long, I'd been the outcast, the forgotten son, the subject of whispered pity. Now, for the first time, I wanted to open my door and share something real. To my surprise, people came. My neighbor, Mrs. Dawes, arrived with homemade lemonade. An old friend from high school knocked, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. Even Uncle Ben, who hadn't spoken to me in years, showed up in his faded flannel shirt, eyes glassy but full of something like pride. We sat around my tiny kitchen table laughing, telling stories, eating pie. Someone brought a guitar. We sang old songs until the sun dipped below the rooftops. The pecan pie was gone in minutes, but no one seemed to mind. They just wanted to be there together. In that noisy, crowded room, I felt the walls I'd built around myself finally start to crumble. Maybe, just maybe, I could belong again. Not because of money or inheritance or what the world thought of my family, but because I had something to share, a memory, a meal, a second chance. After everyone left, I washed the dishes in silence. That's when I noticed it. one last blank page at the back of Grandma's cookbook, just waiting. For the first time, I wondered what my recipe might be, not for pie, but for something new, a tradition of my own. Maybe redemption, hope. The best chapters are the ones we haven't written yet. The lawyer called. "You're now the sole heir, Michael. The estate is yours." When the phone rang, I almost didn't answer. It was early morning, sunlight just beginning to warm the curtains in my modest kitchen. But the voice on the line was unmistakable. My mother's attorney, his tone different now, formal but almost gentle. "Michael, I wanted you to be the first to know. The court's ruling is final. Your sister has been convicted of fraud and forgery. You are now the sole heir. The $33 million estate, the properties, everything, legally belongs to you." I sat there stunned, the phone pressed to my ear, the weight of years of pain and longing suddenly shifting into something new. Triumph, yes, but also an unexpected calm. I'd chased their approval all my life. Told myself happiness would come with the money, the mansions, the Teslas, the legacy. But now, with it all finally within my reach, the old hunger felt empty. News spread quickly. Some relatives called to congratulate me. Others reached out for favors, their voices syrupy and false. Reporters waited outside the gates of the family mansion. My father, who'd lost everything protecting Charlotte, left a single message simply saying, "Do better with it than I did." Even the townspeople seemed divided. Some jealous, some relieved, most just hungry for gossip. I toured the estate, polished marble floors, endless hallways, every room echoing with memories both good and bad. I thought of Mom, her laughter in the garden, the way she'd hum as she cooked. I thought of Charlotte, once my best friend, now gone from my life. I thought of Grandma Lucy, her faith in me, her reminders that gold is always buried in dust. But standing in the great empty kitchen, cookbook in hand, I realized my victory wasn't really about any of this. For the first time, I saw that I was whole with or without the riches. I had reclaimed not just the estate, but my own self-worth. I wasn't invisible. I mattered. Still, one question lingered, the most important one yet. What would I do with all this? What kind of legacy would I leave for the family, for the town, for the next generation? Sometimes the hardest choice is what you do after you finally won. I handed the mansion's keys to a local charity, part of Mom's wish. With the estate officially in my name, I wandered the silent halls one last time, memories flickering with every step. Portraits on the walls, the echo of laughter on the marble staircase, the scent of old wood and lemon polish. It all felt heavier now, like a responsibility instead of a prize. I remembered Mom's voice from years before as she stirred batter in the kitchen. "If you ever get the chance, Michael, do something that matters with what we leave behind." Those words stuck with me, growing louder as the days passed. So, on a bright spring morning, I invited the directors of a local charity to the house. The organization helped families who'd lost everything, just like I once had. I led them through the gardens, showed them the library, the sunlit dining room, and the sprawling kitchen. Their eyes widened. "This place could change lives," one whispered. By noon, the deed was signed. I handed them the keys. Keys I'd once envied in my sister's hands, now passing into a future I finally believed in. The charity would use the mansion as a center for community events, housing for those in need, and a safe space for healing. But that was just the start. I set up a scholarship in Mom's name for local kids who dreamed big but started with little. I established a grant for aspiring chefs, honoring Grandma Lucy and her love of recipes. The cars, the jewels, even the art, each was auctioned, the proceeds flowing back into the town that raised me, rather than gathering dust behind locked doors. As the transformation took shape, I felt a new peace. I wasn't just undoing Charlotte's mistakes. I was rewriting our family's story. No longer was it about what we owned, but about what we gave. Friends and neighbors who'd once looked at our house with envy now saw it as a beacon of hope. Pride warmed me, but it was a quiet pride, rooted in something deeper than victory. Fulfillment replaced old bitterness. For the first time, I believed Mom and Grandma would be proud, not because I'd won the estate, but because I'd chosen to let go. My family's story would no longer be about what we owned, but who we became. Thanksgiving this time, everyone had a seat, not just family by blood. The leaves burned gold outside the kitchen windows as I basted the turkey, a borrowed apron tied around my waist. The mansion, once echoing with cold, empty grandeur, was alive with noise and the smells of cinnamon and sage. Dishes clattered, laughter spilled from every room, and kids darted between adults, shrieking with delight. This wasn't the Thanksgiving I grew up with. No nervous formality, no cold silences, no eyes watching to see if Charlotte's smile was wider than mine. The guests were friends, neighbors, a few faces from the local shelter, a teacher who'd given me a second chance in high school, the charity director and her family, even Grandma Lucy's oldest friend. Every chair was filled. No one sat at the edge hoping to be noticed. Charlotte's seat, the one she'd claimed as her throne at every holiday, now belonged to a shy boy whose family had just found a home thanks to the charity. He stared in awe at the pies cooling by the window. Before the meal, I stood and raised my glass, filled with sweet tea, not champagne. This house used to be about what we could take from each other. Not anymore. Today, it's about what we can share. Heads nodded. The teacher wiped away a tear. Someone squeezed my hand. As we passed the food, plate after plate, no one counting portions or whispering judgments, I felt something inside me finally settle. Belonging. Joy. I realized that real family wasn't defined by blood or last names. It was built by kindness, forgiveness, and showing up, especially for those who'd been left behind. We went around the table sharing what we were thankful for. I watched as people spoke not of wealth or possessions, but of hope, new beginnings, and feeling seen. Contentment washed over me. This was the family table I'd always wanted, the one I'd built from scraps, mistakes, and second chances. I looked around the table, knowing the real inheritance was never money. I picked up the old recipe book. Time to write my own page. Sunlight spilled across the kitchen counter as I ran my hand over the battered recipe book, its pages soft and stained from generations of use. For the first time, it didn't feel like a symbol of my failures. It felt like a gift, one I was finally ready to add to. I sat at the kitchen table, flipping past Mom's handwriting, Grandma Lucy's careful notes in the margins, Charlotte's childish doodles on the dessert pages. At the very end, one page was still blank. My page. I thought of everything I'd lost: inheritance, family trust, even my old idea of what success looked like. And I thought of everything I'd found: forgiveness, dignity, a home filled with laughter, and a table that welcomed everyone. Pen in hand, I began to write: recipe for redemption. Ingredients: one honest heart, a heaping scoop of courage, pinches of regret and hope, a dash of second chances. Directions: mix shame and anger until transformed into understanding. Fold in truth, even when it hurts. Share with as many as you can, generously. Bake with patience. Serve warm, with kindness. I signed my name beneath the recipe and, underneath, added a message for the next person who would hold this book. Family isn't built by who inherits the fortune. It's built by those who are willing to do the work, day by day, page by page. Never let anyone tell you what you're worth. The smallest inheritance might hide the biggest truth. As I closed the book, I felt a sense of peace I'd never known. The legacy Mom and Grandma Lucy left me wasn't millions. It was the courage to make something new, to choose forgiveness over bitterness, and to rewrite the ending of my story. Sometimes the smallest inheritance hides the biggest truth. Like, subscribe, and join me for the next story, where the recipe for justice is always homemade.